This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and the Washington Commanders just signed wide receiver Martavis Bryant. Not just worked out, but signed. We also made room for him on the roster by cutting kicker Ramiz Ahmed. And just to let you know, this video is sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. We have a lot to talk about today. First of all, is this a potential steal, or is this just a waste of time? Is he a camp body, or is this somebody that they actually expect to contribute on Sundays? We're going to do a deep dive into the entire wide receiver depth chart to see where Martavis Bryant fits somewhere in the middle, who he's above, and obviously some of the guys that he's below. Dan Quinn said in his press conference before practice today that he's a linebacker at wide receiver, so there's some high praise there. But then with the kicker situation, I'm astonished that we kicked the lesser of the two evils. Is the kicker position the biggest weakness and the biggest problem on the Commanders roster right now? We're going to dive into all of that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned because I will be coming out with a video later breaking down everything that went down in training camp practice today, so be on the lookout for that. That's going to come out later on this evening. So I will also be having y'all updated, of course, once we go to Miami and we start doing the joint practice stuff there. I will have the full breakdown for that too, and I will be live streaming the preseason game against the Miami Dolphins like I just did with the Jets, all 4 quarters and everything, even breaking down the backups of the backups of the backups. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that, and instead of wasting even more of y'all time, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so again, the official announcement, the Washington Commanders themselves posted on Twitter that they have signed wide receiver Martavis Bryant, and to make room for him in the roster, they released kicker Ramiz Ahmed, who we signed just a couple of months ago. Let's start with the Martavis Bryant part of this whole thing. There's a lot to analyze too, man. There's a lot to analyze, and here's a picture of him already on the field, his number 88 jersey. That's a big receiver jersey. You know, the smaller, shiftier receivers like Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, even maybe throw De'Ami Brown in there with that number 2. You know, they wear the single digit, maybe the lower digit numbers like Terry McLaurin 7. But a big guy like Martavis Bryant, he should be wearing 88. I mean, he's built like a tight end almost. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And man, my boy Jamal at Let Maul Tell It said it perfectly, man. I was wondering the same exact thing, thinking the same exact thing. He said on Twitter, that man Martavis made one sharp cut during his workout and they saw enough. I mean, golly. Because, again, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, how they bring him in for a workout and he's already signed before practice even started. Practice started at 9 a.m. and the team announced that they signed him officially at 8:42. Of course, it actually happened well before then. Like, what did he even do before practice even started that made them say yes this time around? Because remember, we brought him in for a workout just a couple of months ago and didn't sign him then after a practice. What changed now? And to be honest, I don't think he just suddenly looks better today. Maybe he does, who knows? But I'm assuming that the wide receiver group isn't panning out to what they expected it to be. Maybe not looking as good as they probably hoped since back then. Maybe they had higher hopes back then. Like, yeah, they don't necessarily look like where we want them to be, but let's give them some time at least to show that maybe somebody stands out. Maybe we've reached to the point at this far in training camp to where they're like, well, not enough people have stood out enough to where we're comfortable just ignoring Martavis Bryant's presence. Let's bring him back and let's make sure we sign him this time. Don't waste his time. Bring him in for a workout. End up not signing him again. I guess it kind of makes sense that they brought him in for the second time and they already knew that they were probably just going to end up signing him anyway. Why just waste that time, that guy's time, keep calling him to the DMV area just for him to leave with no job? And I'm telling you right now, man, it doesn't help that I'm seeing that De'Ami Brown tweaked something in practice like 30 minutes in and was standing off to the side. But even that was well after they already signed Martavis. So Diami's tweet, because I don't want to go as far as saying that it's an injury, but just in case, it had nothing to deal with this signing. No effect at all. And shouts out to Burgundy Blog, because I agree. He said Martavis Bryant possesses key ingredients for preseason hype hero. And I'm not going to lie, because people are going to go look at his highlights from what he did with the Steelers. And people are going to be like, man, if we can get that back out of him, you know, we may have found something here. But I want everybody, even though I'm Mr. Glass Half Full, I'm Mr. Optimism, always best case scenario, you know, that's just typically my thing. That's just how I am in life, not even just with football. But even me being that type of guy, I want to make sure y'all just slow it down a little bit, because there was a reason that not only he was available this long for any other team in the NFL, all 32 teams, including us, to sign him. He was available to this point for a reason. But even just beyond that, again, we brought him in for a workout just a couple of months ago, and they didn't see enough to where they were like, yeah, we need to get this guy. So let's just pause the brakes a little bit. People are going to look at those highlights and be like, man, if we can somehow tap into that. And of course, me being glass half full, you know what I'm saying? I can't help it. It's kind of like maybe if he has Jaden Daniels as his quarterback, maybe we can realize some of that potential, because he has the ability to get deep downfield, make some big plays, use his big size to make those plays down the field. You saw that perfect dot that Jaden Daniels threw to Dyami Brown in that preseason game. Martavis Bryant is even bigger. It's not like Dyami like separated from the corner to give like Jaden Daniels this big window. Martavis Bryant would probably give Jaden Daniels a slightly bigger window just off of his size alone than what Dyami gave him. So I mean, there's like you can see the pathway, but it's very foggy, it's very cloudy, it's very dark. I'm not going to go ahead and buy into this, but I'm still very excited about seeing what he can do in the preseason. And of course, again, just to warn y'all, a lot of people are going to go look at his highlights and be like, man, we found the one. Just buckle up for that. This definitely seems like he may be like the preseason hero type of guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out there and makes plays against, you know, some of the Dolphins DBs, especially if he's out there with the backups. With what he was doing against starting high-level corners at one point in time just years ago, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out there and looks like a starter amongst backups. So we're going to monitor the situation. We're going to make sure we don't overreact to things. I'm just trying to lay out all of the information and opinions that I have as we're going along. Just to remind you, this is a 6'4" wide receiver that flashed a lot of potential since entering the league in 2014. He had 14 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons. Then he was suspended for the 2016 season, violating substance abuse policy, and then indefinitely after the 2018 season. And remember, he was already here just a couple of months ago for a workout. Dan Quinn said before practice that Martavis Bryant's size and catch radius were factors into signing him. So that just lets you know that's what they're looking for right now. That he didn't necessarily say route running. He didn't necessarily say speed. We have a lot of that on this roster. I've been screaming this since last year when Bryson Tremaine was our only tall receiver. It was everybody was 6'1" or shorter, and then you had Bryson Tremaine at like 6'4", 6'5" last year. And even though he was an undrafted free agent, and even though he's way further along this year than he was last year, he definitely was. You could argue he was not ready to make the roster last year. I would argue this year that he is. But even just since last year, I've been screaming, man, we need a wide receiver with some size. This wide receiver room is filled with a bunch of small, shifty, route running receivers. It would be nice if we had some big, tall, physical, contested catch guys. And Bryson Tremaine is starting to develop, but clearly Dan Quinn may have felt like that wasn't necessarily enough. They want to bring another guy in that can do that, and that's what we're bringing Martavis Bryant in. Again, he specifically said catch radius and size. He didn't say speed. He didn't say deep playability. He didn't say the ability to take the lid off the defense. He didn't say route running. He didn't say getting open or anything like that, creating separation. We have a lot of that in this receiver room already, understandably so. So that's why it makes sense that he's looking for the size and catch radius. But then Dan Quinn also said that Martavis Bryant looks like a linebacker at receiver, and that adding size to the wide receiver room was of interest. And then Ben Standig brings up a good point, saying how quickly Bryant shows he can play in a game, something he hasn't done since 2018, is uncertain. But Dan Quinn saw him in practice with Dallas last year, and that's a good point. Dan Quinn also said that there weren't any reservations in signing Martavis Bryant despite not playing in the NFL for 5 years, because of the fact that he said that Martavis Bryant looked pretty good on the Cowboys practice squad last year and just didn't get his shot to actually play in actual games. And then also shouts out to Resh Manuel, because even outside of the fact that Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys last year and got to see Martavis Bryant every day in practice while he was on the practice squad. On top of that, shouts out to Resh Manuel. Assistant DBs coach William Gay also knows Bryant from their 4 years together in Pittsburgh. He was a defensive back there. Now he's our defensive backs coach. Maybe he vouched for him. Also, wide receivers coach Bobby Ingram also went up against them twice a year for 4 years as the Ravens wide receiver coach there. So these are two guys that are maybe familiar enough with them, and then you throw in Dan Quinn as your head coach. That's a third. Maybe all three of those guys vouch for him. That's probably why he ended up getting a second opportunity, but who knows? Next up, just to go back to his history just a little bit, like how did he get here? He caught 126 passes for 17 touchdowns during 3 seasons with Pittsburgh from 2014 to 2018. But then he hasn't played in the NFL since 2018, as he has dealt with multiple suspensions for violating the NFL substance abuse policy. He spent his first 4 seasons in the NFL with Pittsburgh after being picked in the 4th round of the 2014 draft, and then the rest was history, balled out. Then he was traded to the Ravens, playing in 8 games before going to the injured reserve with a knee injury, and then the suspension started. He then signed with the CFL in 2021, the Indoor Football League in 2021, and then the Fan Control League in 2022. He played for the XFL's Vegas Vipers last year, playing in 8 games, and then he finally returned to the NFL last season, signing with the Dallas Cowboys after he was reinstated, but he wasn't activated for any games. He was just a permanent practice squad guy. Just to catch you up on the history, shouts out to Hogs Haven, Scott Jennings specifically of Hogs Haven, for that quick little background information and basically how did we get here to this point. And again, like I said earlier, I'm actually pretty excited about seeing what he's going to do in this preseason game against the Dolphins. Joint practice as well. I believe we have joint practice probably coming Thursday, and so I'm really excited to see what he looks like out there, especially with a guy like Jaden Daniels throwing on the ball for reasons I've already stated, man. But at the same time, I mean, this preseason game is going to be really interesting, not even just for Martavis Bryant, but as far as the outlook for our entire wide receiver room, because boy, things are probably about to get hectic. Which takes me to my next point. Now let's do a little experiment, man, because I want to know who is obviously above Martavis Bryant on the depth chart, and then who is not. If he were to make the final 53-man roster, which I'm not projecting him to do as of today, but if he were, whose current spot would he be taking? Because he definitely is not a roster lock by any means right now. But I want to see whose roster spots he's threatening as of today. Let's start from the top, of course. You know, Terry McLaurin, obviously very safe. No chance there. Jahan Dotson, I'm assuming, is safe right now, but there's a lot of speculation that maybe he's not as safe as we think, but he's safe. De'Ami Brown, I'm assuming he's safe. He's been balling out. Honestly, from what I've been hearing and seeing so far this offseason, he's been our second best receiver. Olamide Zaccheaus, not only has he been one of your top 4 receivers at worst, but he also looks like he may win the starting punt return job. And then Luke McCaffrey is obviously safe, because not only was he your 3rd round pick, but he's also shown flashes. So I'm really excited about Luke McCaffrey as far as like the future of this team. Maybe not necessarily week 1 wise, because guys like Jaden Daniels and Ben Sinnott, Mike Sanders still, I'm expecting them to contribute immediately week 1, as like, if even in Ben Sinnott's case, he may not necessarily be a starter, but he's going to play a lot of snaps and have a strong impact on games, a strong positive impact. Johnny Newton, I would feel the exact same way if he wasn't dealing with injuries. Brandon Coleman, same thing. If he wasn't dealing with injuries, I would feel the exact same way. Luke McCaffrey may be one of our, probably is the first pick in our draft order, going from beginning to end, that we may not necessarily expect to go out there and play a lot of snaps and contribute in a big way as of week 1. But I'm expecting at some point this rookie season, once he starts to develop, because again, he just switched back to the wide receiver position just 2 years ago. He was just a quarterback, switched to the receiver position 2 years ago. That's why there's probably still a little bit of growing pains. There's some development that has to go there, and he's trying to learn a lot, because remember a few weeks ago, well, actually a couple of months ago, I believe it was, you saw Anthony Lynn practicing with him doing handoffs and things like that. So not only is he trying to switch to the receiver position from quarterback just 2 years ago, but then now they're also trying to throw on this running back role to him, a guy that can make plays out of the backfield, like a Curtis Samuel, like we most recently saw with the Commanders, or Adam Peters viewpoint wise and Anthony Lynn wise, like a Deebo Samuel. So you know, there's a lot of growth to happen there, not just because of how necessarily raw he is, him being a rookie, but he's also trying to learn a lot of things at once right now. But we've seen flashes. He pancaked my boy Tyler Owens at some point in practice a couple of weeks ago. And so you're seeing the blocking potential there. But You have Terry, you have Jahan. It seems like, in my opinion, but some people are speculating maybe not Jahan. Then you have Diami, Olamide. I'm so proud of myself for getting that right immediately. Now I'm getting quick with it. And Luke McCaffrey, that's 5. We're more than likely going to keep at least 6 receivers, maybe 7, but I doubt it. That leaves Jamison Crowder. If Olamide Zaccheaus is your starting punt returner, I highly doubt Jamison Crowder makes this team. That's his highest contribution to the team right there. That's where he's most valuable. I like him as a receiver. I think he's pretty solid depth. I think he's a pretty solid slot receiver. But again, we have a bunch of slot receivers. Jahan Dotson is probably ultimately should be a slot receiver, even if he is projected to potentially maybe be our wide receiver 1 just based off of his first round pick status and some flashes I've been hearing about and seeing in training camp so far, even though again I don't know what's going on lately, but there's some speculation there that I'm not going to really dive into today. We're going to get to it a little bit later, slightly. We'll get there. B Mitch has some really interesting things to say. That's why I brought up the wide receiver drama earlier. But either way, my point is we have a bunch of shifty guys. We have a bunch of slot receivers. Olamide Zaccheaus, slot receiver. Terry McLaurin, even though he will be our X, can play in the slot. De'Ami Brown can play in the slot if you need him to, but I see him more of like a Z than Luke McCaffrey. I see him as like a big slot. And so Jamison Crowder, if you're not the starting punt returner, and if you're not even one of our top 2 slots, not likely that you make the team. So Martavis maybe has a chance over Jamison Crowder, even though as of today, if we had to do the 53-man roster prediction today, like tomorrow, we have to send it in. 53 people, cut everybody else. I have Jamison Crowder over Martavis Bryant today, but yeah, I mean, I'm just projecting to the future. We still have maybe less than a month left to go, but a few weeks and things can change. Martavis Bryant does bring height to him. There's a niche there that Jamison Crowder doesn't have any type of niche over anybody else above him on the depth chart right now. Martavis Bryant is probably, depending on how you feel about Bryson Tremaine, the highest person on our depth chart with some height. Now next up, Bryson Tremaine, been balling out. I believe he deserves that 6th spot. If we want to keep 7 and you really want to keep Martavis Bryant, maybe he can get that spot there. But I think Bryson Tremaine has done enough in the preseason. That alone, but the joint practices against the Jets. Our offense didn't have much going. He was one of the very few bright spots we had there. He had 2 deep down the field plays there. I believe he had another one today, just in training camp practice today. All throughout training camp, he's been making plays. Logan Paulson even talked about the fact that Cliff Kingsbury is going to love him specifically because of the fact that he can make plays down the field as a big receiver. And Logan Paulson also pointed out the fact that this guy, at the very worst, is a really good special teams contributor as well. I think Bryson Tremaine may be fairly safe, but we'll see. Then you have Casimir Allen. I've been hearing about him flashing a lot, but if Olamide is your starting punt returner, and maybe even one of your starting kick returners, it's not looking too good for Casimir Allen. But I loved what I've heard and seen from him so far in training camp. So that's a crazy situation, but he's questionable. Right now, Jamison Crowder, Bryson Tremaine, Casimir Allen, questionable. Mitchell Tinsley has made plays, questionable. Davion Davis at a certain point a couple of weeks ago was out there with the starters quite a bit and making plays, catching passes from Jaden Daniels against our starting corners, but right now he's questionable. Byron Pringle, we brought him in here to potentially be one of our starting kick returners, and I thought when we signed him he was very safe, but since then haven't heard much from him. We'll see. And then my Georgia Bulldog, I'm not gonna lie, is the least safe out of all of these wide receivers on this depth chart, man, and I'm rooting for him because he is a Georgia dog, but I'm not very, very optimistic about him, man. But hey, man, we'll see what happens. I think the only safe guys we only have 5 safe guys. Again, Terry McLaurin, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown. After that, Martavis, it's up in the air. I think Bryson Tremaine, out of that last group of 7 guys, not including Martavis Bryant, maybe the safest just because of his niche, strong special teams contributor. And we're not even talking about returning. We're talking about the other ways that he can contribute that maybe a lot of those other guys can't. And then also the size. But again, him and Martavis Bryant are kind of clashing with that niche. They're both big, tall receivers. Do they want to keep 2? Last year, the previous regime didn't even feel the need to keep 1. Who knows if this regime feels the need to keep 2? We'll see what happens there. And then Dan Quinn said something in his press conference before practice today that really made me start to think that maybe Martavis Bryant doesn't have as much of a shot to make this roster as I originally thought, man. Maybe he's more of a camp body than I originally assumed, because maybe he does not make this roster unless he balls out beyond what they expect of him. Because Dan Quinn said, quote, seeing the skill, seeing how we compete against them. Oftentimes in practice, we put him in a certain spot to simulate the size of a receiver, the speed of a receiver. He's got a real size, like the catch radius, throw it over here. He's got the length to throw it away from somebody, knowing, hey, this is incomplete or my guy's gonna get it, unquote. And those are big compliments. Don't get me wrong. Those are phenomenal compliments. Those are certain specific traits that arguably I would say probably only Bryson Tremaine is the only other receiver, including Martavis Bryant, who we just signed on this roster, that gives you that, something that Jaden Daniels could do. Well, unless you want to throw in the tight ends, Cole Turner can do that as well. You can argue Zach Ertz may have that to him, and I think Ben Sinnott can definitely grow into that guy as well. But just wide receiver room specifically, outside of Martavis Bryant, all you have is Bryson Tremaine as a guy that you can describe that way. But the main thing that I noticed, if you read in between the lines, he said that oftentimes in practice, we put him in a certain spot just to simulate the size of a receiver. And when you really think about it, is this a signing just to get our corners ready to have to cover Mike Evans in less than a month? That's what my antenna's telling me, just based off of that one specific part of the quote. Again, there were a lot of compliments there, and those compliments are true, and I'm pretty sure Dan Quinn meant it, but he probably let something slip out there. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Let me know if you agree that maybe I'm overthinking this a little bit, but it seems like a situation where they want to give our corners as many reps against Martavis Bryant as possible, along with Bryson Tremaine, who was already here, so that they can learn how to deal with and cover big receivers as we prepare for Tampa Bay, potentially. Because that's a whole new battle of leverage, angles, jumping ability, jump timing, physicality, all of that kind of stuff that takes time to adjust to. It's similar to how teams bring in mobile quarterbacks to practice against before they play up against a mobile quarterback in a game. I mean, you got to find multiple ways to simulate what you'll be up against. And is Martavis Bryant specifically being brought in to do just that? Not exactly sure. Again, I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm just trying to give you every possible angle and opinion and viewpoint of what's going down right now. That may just be one of the reasons that he's here. Who knows, though? I'm not going to dive into it too much. Again, let me know in the comment section if you feel that way. Shouts out to JP Finley, because I feel like I agree with what he said after the signing. He said a few thoughts on the Bryant signing. One, Dan Quinn knows him from last year. He's not worried about all the stuff from years back. Number two, if he can't play or doesn't fit, costs nothing, low risk, high, long shot reward. And this is the most important part to me. That second one, you literally don't miss here. You don't lose anything. And if he ends up somehow being really good and somehow returning back to his 2014 to 2018 form, then this was a huge come up here for extremely cheap. And at a time that we really need right now, because this wide receiver room, just based on the moves that they're making, some of the things that they're saying kind of underneath their breath, kind of whispering around right now and indicating from some of their moves, it sounds like this wide receiver room is not where they want it to be right now. If Martavis Bryant can step up and be a true playmaker for us there, that's going to be big time, man. That's going to be arguably one of the most underrated signings of the offseason if that ends up happening. But of course, the likely chance that it will not happen, the most likely chance for sure that it won't happen, then it doesn't cost you anything. And also, shouts out to Nikki Javala for pointing out the fact that Martavis Bryant said that he was 230 pounds last season. Now he's down to 208. That's pretty notable, man. That's a pretty interesting weight difference right there. I mean, and I know he's being brought in for size, but maybe he wanted to add a little bit more quickness. They don't want him to only just be a big, tall, take up space receiver. They may want him to be able to separate it and get open on his own and not just solely rely on his height, physicality, and jump ball ability. And then lastly, JP Finley said, third, not a great endorsement of the current wide receiver room. I completely agree there. Completely agree. But shouts out to Serge the Shooter, because he was there at practice today, and he said the first big play for Martavis Bryant out here. A great block on the screen. He took the DB out of the picture to the sideline. Lord have mercy. Completely just escorted him out the way like a bouncer from what I'm hearing. It was a play that allowed Jamison Crowder to make a big play and gain a bunch of yards on the screen. Martavis Bryant already making his presence felt. And that is how you stand out, man, especially in an offense that wants to run the ball a lot. That's why Dyami Brown and Terry McLaurin are pretty much indispensable in this offense, man. They're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to do a lot of screens. And when I say run the ball, it's not only the running backs, it may be other wide receivers like those screens. It may be Jaden Daniels as a quarterback. You don't want to get Jaden Daniels hurt because your wide receivers can't block. You need those wide receivers to block, man. That's why Luke McCaffrey probably caught this coaching staff's eye big time when he pancaked my boy Tyler Owens on a block just a couple of weeks ago. Blocking at the receiver position is paramount in this offense specifically. It's already a great trait to have in general and vastly increases your chances of making a roster. But in Cliff Kingsbury's offense specifically, it's almost imperative. I would almost go as far to say that it is a requirement. Also, Bryson Tremaine, though, Martavis Bryant making plays as a blocker. Bryson Tremaine made a really good contested catch in practice today as well. So if you're trying to keep track of maybe they're pinning them against each other, we can only keep one big receiver. I mean, and that's quite likely a scenario right now. Martavis Bryant standing out as a blocker, but Bryson Tremaine is continuing to stand out as a big-time playmaker at the receiver position like he's been doing all training camp, including in that doom and gloom joints practice that we had against the Jets where not a lot of things were going our way positively. That was a guy that made 2 big plays down the field against them, and he also made a play in the preseason game. So do not sleep on Bryson Tremaine. I know we brought in Martavis Bryant, but do not sleep on Bryson Tremaine. And I don't know exactly what's going on right now, because next up I want to talk about this B. Mitch situation. B. Mitch, I don't know who he's specifically talking about, but on his radio show this morning after practice, B. Mitch went in on a wide receiver that looked entitled and was apparently showing bad body language, pouting, sulking, and all of that, specifically after the signing of Martavis Bryant. No idea who he's talking about, even though people are speculating that it may be Dyami Brown, maybe Jahan Dotson. I'm not exactly sure, but all I know is it doesn't sound good, man. Somebody seems to be upset about that Martavis Bryant signing. Not only just workout, but signing. Let me know in the comment section who y'all think it is, because, hey, man, body language is huge, especially for a guy like Dan Quinn, the head coach that we have right now. Body language, you're not showing good body language, doesn't matter the talent, you can go. Joey Jr. and Dan Quinn have made that very clear, that how you play, I mean, your mentality, your emotional intelligence and things like that weigh just as much, if not more, than your actual physical talent. So even if you are one of the guys that just earlier in the video, I considered safe over Martavis Bryant on the depth chart, if you're doing what B. Mitch is talking about, if you're one of those guys that B. Mitch is talking about right now, you're probably going to end up getting cut. And people, again, are speculating Dyami Brown and Jahan Dotson is one of the candidates. I don't know for sure. I have no idea. But it doesn't matter who it is, you're not safe. And I'm willing to bet money I know it's not Terry McLaurin. It's everybody else that right now we got the spotlight on them. We need to start bringing people in and interrogating them. Was it you? Was it you? Who was it? I would love to know from the media members there. They probably wouldn't tell you because maybe they noticed, and there's a reason that B. Mitch kept the wide receiver's name anonymous. So we'll probably never find out who it is unless some major roster moves happen, and then we're like, whoa, that guy got cut? Where did that come from? You can revisit the moment earlier today where B. Mitch went in on a wide receiver. Again, I'm really hoping it's not Dyami Brown and Jahan Dotson. I'm really hoping that it's neither of those two, but this is a very interesting situation. It sounds like the reason I'm even a little bit feeding into the speculation that it may be one of those two, because B. Mitch, the way that he talked about it, it did sound like it's a receiver that felt entitled and felt like they had not only a great chance of making this team, but having a great chance of contributing on Sundays, which doesn't sound like one of the roster guys deep down the depth chart, unless it's one of them that's been balling out this training camp and they thought that every step of the way, every chance that they've had, they've made plays, and it's like, dang, after all of that, you're still bringing in another receiver. Maybe it's one of them, but B. Mitch made it sound like, he didn't say this specifically, but the way that he worded it sounded like it was one of those guys higher up on that depth chart, but I don't know for sure, but I'm definitely worried because that's not good at all. But before we get to the kicker side of things, first of all, let my boy Mike Vick talk to you, and then I'm going to talk to you afterwards, man.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
See, now it's my turn. Are you looking for a new book this football season? Well, let me tell you, man, it should be BetUS for sure. Please stop playing. First of all, they have the fastest payouts in the industry. I know y'all want y'all money fast. I know I do. Why not, man? And when you sign up through me, you can get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000, or even a 200% crypto deposit bonus with your first deposit. Make sure you check out my BetUS link in the description below. Your boy RicoScores is gonna hook you up every time, man. I'm trying to tell you. And it's a fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process, so you don't even have to worry about that part. That's big time, especially for a guy like me. No hassle, no none of that. And also, they have 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year. They're always there for you, even when you're not working. You take days off. You maybe, depending on what job you have, you take the weekends off. They don't. Always on, holidays, whatever, they got you. They also have live wagering on all major games, all of them, you name it, trust me. And to me, they have the best betting variety in the business. And even if you somehow miss on your bet, somehow, because they're setting you up for greatness here, but if you somehow miss, you can even get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. That's forgiveness. We love that around here. And did you know that BetUS can even give you your very own personal account manager? Now, who else is doing that, man? Like, come on, dog. Come on. And again, y'all are my people. They're my people. I feel like y'all need to rock with each other. It only makes sense. Off top, go on and hit that website for sure. Again, link in as the pinned comment in this video and in the description of this video as well. Definitely go click that link and man, rock with us, man. Now the kicker situation. The Commanders have officially cut kicker Ramiz Ahmed. And after cutting Ramiz Ahmed, I mean, I'm like, is this both good and bad? You know, let me explain. The bad, even though because Ramiz Ahmed is terrible, but the bad, because Riley Patterson has somehow been even worse than Chris Blewett's backup, who is Ramiz Ahmed, throughout this training camp and preseason. And I do question why they cut the guy that's less terrible. And yeah, when I say less terrible, I mean it. I'm not going to use the word better, because that insinuates that both guys are at least somewhat good and one guy is better than the other. No, they're both bad, but one was less terrible. Ramiz Ahmed, the guy that we just cut, was the one that was less terrible between the two. So now we are currently stuck with probably, I would say, the worst kicker in the NFL remaining on your roster after you just probably cut the second worst kicker in the NFL. But, so again, that's the bad. But the good is, this shows that they are not accepting this terrible kicker situation that was unfairly placed upon them after that whole Brandon McManus situation came about out of nowhere. Now, granted, I didn't expect them to accept this kicker situation at all, but I was predicting that maybe they'll just wait until, you know, just accept this kicker situation for now, wait until other teams cut their kickers, and then bring in one of the ones that, you know, maybe that they cut that has to just by default be better than what we currently have right now, man. Because a lot of teams have extra kickers on their roster. A lot of teams have 2, some teams even have 3, and I'm assuming that even some of those teams with 3, that third one may be better than what we have going on right now, especially with Riley Patterson left on the roster right now. But I'm very, very happy that they didn't wait until then. They seem to be a little bit more proactive about the situation than I even expected. And I'm assuming that since we cut a kicker to sign a receiver, when they eventually do try to find another kicker to sign, they'll probably cut a receiver to do so. But they're probably going to give that receiver enough time to prove, you know, they're going to give all of these receivers enough time after the signing of Martavis Bryant to show who we do need to cut after bringing in Martavis Bryant. And again, I'm just assuming you cut a kicker to bring in a receiver, you're more than likely going to cut a receiver to bring in a kicker. And not even just because it's just a fair trade, that just makes much more sense. Who knows? But maybe they just end up liking Martavis Bryant and then cutting a receiver whose depth chart spot that Martavis Bryant literally took. But after signing Martavis Bryant, somebody's going to end up potentially being out the way because of that, because we need to keep as many players of other position groups right now as possible, because we're not sure about any roster group on this team right now. I can't for certain predict the entire group that we're going to have on a 53-man roster in any group right now. I mean, maybe edge rusher, but even then the Jamin Davis conversation comes up. Maybe safety, but Derek Forrest is starting to make a comeback. I mean, I really tight end. I guess maybe it's your safest bet, but are we absolutely sure that Kosin Yankov will not make the roster over Cole Turner? Cole Turner looked really good in that preseason game. After going back to watch, he had some pretty good blocks as a tight end, man, and run plays and things like that. So, hey, man, Cole Turner, maybe tight end. If we keep 4 tight ends, that's probably the most predictable group right now. The wide receiver group, not exactly sure. Maybe quarterback, because Sam Hartman got hurt. You can easily just stow him away on your practice squad as one of the guys that you protect so nobody else can take away. Probably quarterback and tight end. That's probably it. Every other position group right now, I have no idea. You want to keep as many players in those groups as possible before we get to this 53-man roster projection. So if you're bringing in a receiver, you more than likely want to cut a receiver to keep that receiver that you just brought in. But we'll see. But Dan Quinn even spoke on the kicker situation before practice. He said that the kicker competition remains open, but they wanted to give Riley Patterson all the reps this week. That's really interesting. It still amazes me that they kept the guy that somehow managed to hit the goalpost on 3 of his kicks within just the last few days, man. He did it for everybody to see in the Jets preseason game, and he's been doing it in joint practices. He did it in joint practice, I believe, as well, but he's definitely confirmed been doing it in our own training camp practices where we just practice amongst each other, not the joint practices. And I'm just wondering, how are you that bad that you keep doing something that you can't do on purpose, man? I'm telling you, not only is he bad, but he has bad luck, dog. You can't do both. You gotta pick one, man, because it's literally harder to hit the goalpost than to just make the field goal, please. So, I mean, he's so bad that he's elite, in my opinion. But again, Dan Quinn even said that they wanted to give Riley Patterson all of the reps this week. So I don't know what he's done, even though he's been doinking and has been worse than Ramiz Ahmed, who we cut. Maybe they just see a little bit more potential and ceiling to him. Maybe Ramiz Ahmed, they already know this is as good as he's going to be. And even though it's slightly better than where Riley Patterson is today, maybe Riley Patterson has the higher ceiling to get better. I'm not exactly sure what the logic is, but apparently that's what they're thinking, because they want to give Riley Patterson a bunch of reps this week. So that sounds like we're not even planning on bringing in kicker competition really anytime soon, because they want to let Riley Patterson kick as much as possible. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm hoping that they somehow figure it out before we get to this regular season, because kickers can win you and lose you games, man. They really can. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. I really appreciate all the support. Again, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. How do you feel about Martavis Bryant's chances of making the roster? And if he does, if we're keeping 6 or 7 guys, give me your projection of who those 6 or 7 guys would be, including or not including Martavis Bryant. Also, let me know who you feel B. Mitch is talking about, because he was very passionate about that. I truly believe that somebody was doing what he was saying that they were doing. I just wonder who it potentially was. Was it one of the guys that we consider a roster lock, and maybe they're not as much of a lock as we thought after that body language that they showed? Or is it maybe one of the guys behind Martavis Bryant potentially in the depth chart and they feel threatened by him being signed? Let me know who you feel, which receivers that situation may have been, and let me know how you feel about this kicker situation that as of right now feels like Mayday. I would argue is the biggest weakness on our team. Now granted, it is the kicker, and maybe you prefer for kicker to be a weakness over a lot of other position groups on the team, but it's still a major weakness, and there is a reason you pay them millions of dollars. They can win you and lose you games. But let me know, maybe I'm overreacting. Do you feel like this kicker situation is not as bad or not as impactful to whether we win games or lose games as I'm saying that I think it is? So let me know how you feel about all of that. Of course, make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like, and also remember that this video was sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, and please make sure y'all gamble responsibly, man. Please do that one. If you don't do nothing else, do that. Again, I really appreciate y'all. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. Catch y'all later. I'm out.